Hey everybody, people always ask me, Manny, what tools should I be using for my Amazon business? Well, this episode is brought to you by helium10.com. These are the same tools I use to generate 6 figures per month with Amazon FBA. I get keyword research, product tracking, listing optimization, search term tracking, account monitoring, and a lot of other brand new money pulling tools that are going to be released to Helium 10 members on a regular basis. If you're going to grab any tools, check these out. Seriously, get a massive advantage with the tools that top sellers are using right now. Okay, and they're all in one place. Some tools and services will have a user cap, so get in there as quickly as you can. That's helium10.com, helium10.com.
Warning, the following podcast has been classified as insanely lucrative. Listener discretion is advised.
The guy that would be at $15 an hour would be able to finish a project in 1 hour, right? That would be it. The other guy would take all 8 hours of the day.
Your attention, please. Listening to the AM/PM podcast may cause recurring revenue streams and unfair advantages over your competitors. Other side effects may include fatter wallets, fired bosses, and longer vacations. Listen at your own risk. Here's your host, 7-figure entrepreneur and online marketing madman, Manny Coats. Manny Coats.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the AM/PM podcast. My name is Manny Coats, and I will be your host, and this is the show where we discuss all things Amazon private label and how to generate recurring revenue streams 24 hours per day during the AM and the PM, hence the name of the show, AM/PM Podcast. As a matter of fact, I was just watching an episode of Westworld. It's a new HBO series, and I'm addicted, I'll admit it. And while I was watching Westworld, I was making money. How cool is that? Pretty cool, I think. So today I want to talk about hiring on the cheap, right? Basically finding the cheapest labor that you can and whether you have a good deal or not. And I think we all go through this. And the reason I'm actually doing this podcast is because on episode number 80, I did an interview with Glenn Zubia. He's a merch seller. And if you haven't checked out that podcast and you're curious about what merch is, definitely do it. That's episode number 80. But the merch program allows you to utilize Amazon's print-on-demand platform. Currently, it's for t-shirts, and they're going to be opening this up to a lot of other things. But it's one of those places where you don't need inventory. You don't have to deal with suppliers. You don't have to worry about refunds. You don't have to worry about running out of stock. You don't have to worry about pay-per-click advertising. You don't have to worry about any of that. At least at this point, none of that matters. You just take a design, you create a design, and then you upload it to their template. It shows what it looks like on a t-shirt, and then you enter the keyword information, the title, the bullets, and the description, just like you would with normal private label. Some of the fields are a little bit different. There's less bullets, for example, that you can fill in. But it's that simple, guys. And then you upload it. Actually, you select the colors of the shirt that you want, and whether you want it front or back side. Anyways, all the details are in episode number 80. And you get this up there, right? You get the shirt up there, and then you start selling, and you get a cut from every shirt. So Amazon sells it for a certain amount. You pick that price, and then whatever the profit on that is, they deposit into your account a month later, roughly. So after doing this, we created a new Facebook group. Okay, it's called Merch Elite. Okay, and it's growing relatively quickly. I think it had about 100 people that joined within the first couple hours of the podcast being released. This was set up yesterday at the time of this podcast. I'm probably not going to be releasing this podcast until a little bit later the next week because we have other things scheduled. But as of the day after creating the group, it had jumped up to about 400 people, 400 members. So I expect it's going to grow pretty fast. I'm trying to be as involved as I can. I don't really do merch myself much anymore. My brother Mike handles that, and we're actually taking a break from the merch program as Mike helps me with the FBA side of things during this busy Q4. So that's what we're doing there. So that opened up the artists that we have. They're at a site, go to merchartist.com, and they're available to hire to create all your shirts. But I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can get shirts made inexpensively for probably $5 or less per shirt. But I also wanted to talk about just a general idea of hiring people on the cheap and how I did it and the mistakes that I made and then how I actually rectified these things and how it worked out for me. And I've done this over multiple businesses. So I go back a long ways, right? I started my first .com back in 1999. I've been on the internet doing business, doing commerce for many, many years, right? For over 15 years. And I've been using Alibaba way before anybody even knew what Alibaba was. Okay, before anybody was talking about this. I remember using Alibaba back when I had an office. We were doing a lot of online marketing. We had a couple pretty big companies. We were doing decently large numbers. It was a $5 million a year company, and we had the entire top floor of a building. And I remember I was like, you know what? It takes quite a while to walk from this side of the building to go talk to our director of marketing who's on the other side of the building. So since we were doing a lot of online marketing and advertising, there was a company that was pretty large at the time that nobody really knew about, where you can import products from China. It's called Alibaba. And we ended up taking or placing an order for electric scooters. And this is when electric scooters were just starting to get popular. Like if you saw an electric scooter, it was like a crazy thing. Like you just didn't see them anywhere, right? And we're talking about those little small ones that you stand on that have the little handle that sticks up and you don't sit on them or anything. And so they were a big deal. So we ended up ordering, I don't remember how many it was. It was something like 40 or 50 of these things. We got them for the whole office and shipped them in in a container, a portion of a container. We didn't know anything about importing or anything like that. That was my first experience with Alibaba. And then at the time, we were very heavily using Odesk, which is now Upwork, right? So Odesk, I've been on Odesk for forever. I don't even know how long I've been using Odesk, but like a decade or something. Maybe longer. I don't even, whenever they came out, when they first came out is when we started using them. I've got over 50,000 hours logged on there. It's crazy. But one of the issues that I had with hiring people on there is the resumes always look good, right? You look at their bio and everything looks fantastic, and you hire somebody for whatever it was. You know, back then we were looking for people to help us write, people that were programmers, people that were designers, all kinds of things. Anything you can think of, we were hiring for the company. We had 50 employees here in the States, and we had probably almost as many overseas as well. So one of the things I looked for was obviously the labor cost, right? If we were hiring people here in the States for, at the time, let's say it was $30 an hour for a high-level tech person, we could get somebody that programmed for a lot less. In fact, my very first programmer that I hired outside the U.S. was from Bosnia, and it was $5 an hour. That's what I was paying this guy, and he was a high-level guy. And he ended up working with me for many, many years. And one of the guys, same thing, I hired him through this guy who later, he started at $5 an hour and moved up, but this guy ended up hiring somebody that he knew, and later on we ended up really liking this new hire, and we ended up bringing him to the U.S., and he quickly became my CTO of the company. So it's kind of an interesting story. But the thing that I started realizing when you're hiring all these people is their bios look great, and you really don't know, or at least I didn't know, if they were efficient or if they were good, because I hire somebody, okay, at the time I'm looking at this resume and I'm like, well, I don't know how to program in this language, and so I'm hiring this person, and whatever they do, I have to take their word at it that, hey, this is going to take 3 days to make, or it's going to take 30 days to make, or whatever the case is going to be, right? Same thing with artwork. I was decent at art, but if somebody's creating an Illustrator file, using vectors, and it takes them 8 hours to make a design, I don't know if that's good or bad, because I don't do AI files or anything like that. So how do I know? So that was the problem. And I hired a lot of people, and I thought I was doing really well, and we were profitable, so it wasn't that big of an issue. But later on, I started realizing that, what I should do, if I don't know how long it's going to take, and I don't have somebody who's an expert at my company right now that can say, hey, Manny, you know what, this guy is just slow. This project should only take 4 hours to do, and it's taken him 16 hours. He's overbilling, he's doing whatever, right? And later on, we did have that in place. We were hiring people that were experts at our company in whatever field we needed, right? Let's say if it was one of our main programming departments, or it was one of the Flash programmers, we had somebody that could then hire, and they knew exactly if somebody was good or bad. But prior to this, it was just kind of guesswork. So one of the things that I posted in Merch Elite is that people are asking, where can I get artists? Where can I hire these guys? How much is it going to cost? And what I did when I started looking for my artists, okay, and I needed artists initially for my or I needed artists at a large scale for my mobile games division. Okay, when we were creating mobile games, we had a ton of guys working on it. We had 3 offices full of programmers overseas. Okay, we had we had an office in India. At one point, we had 2 offices in Pakistan, and then we also had an office we were creating in the Philippines that was just for our artists to support all of the coders, all the programmers that we had. So we were doing a lot. And just to kind of back up a little bit, we published hundreds and hundreds of mobile apps. Okay, so we were doing a lot of volume. So these designers, I would hire them on Upwork. It was Odesk at the time, but I wouldn't hire one at a time. Okay, I would put an ad out there, and I would get like the best 20 guys. Let's say this. I'm using this as an example because I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was at least 20, maybe more. I'd get 20 guys, and I would bring them all into an instant message platform. I think it was Skype at the time. I don't remember at this point, but I would basically give them all a project. Okay, so I'd say, hey, we're making a game. It's going to be a fighting game, and we need a big robot that resembles this kind of a style. And we'd have templates that we could show them kind of the style we're looking for. And then we let them go at it, right? And we'd say, okay, make it as nice as you can. Don't spend more than a full day on this, and then submit it, and then let us know how long it took you, how many hours, okay? And we were tracking the time also through Odesk, through Upwork, right? But we wanted to see what people were doing. And sure enough, out of the 20, a handful of them would not be able to finish it in a day. So they were eliminated. Those that did finish it, we'd go through and we'd look at the results, and we'd be like, man, these guys, they just didn't follow the instructions. You know, we said we wanted it from this particular camera angle, let's say, this perspective, and they didn't do that. So, you know, they weren't following instructions, so we'd eliminate them. And then we'd just go through the process, and then out of those 20, you might be left with half of them that actually finished the project in a day and did follow the instructions, and they looked pretty good. We'd also eliminate any artwork that just looked cheap, wasn't very good. They weren't able to produce the style of art that we wanted, right? Because they had a different artistic style, or they were just not very good. But we just kind of repeated this process, and then we'd take, let's say, the 10 guys, and then we'd give them a second project, okay? And say, well, now we want to create a girl that, you know, is waving a scepter or whatever the case was. And then out of those 10, we could eliminate it down even further. And we would repeat this process. I was constantly going out and hiring guys, and because sometimes you'll hire guys that are really good, and then they'll quit for whatever reason. Okay, maybe they got another job, they too busy, whatever. So we would actually keep hiring people, and we'd pit them against each other. And by comparing them side by side, you can quickly see, wow, okay, this guy is good, but this guy here is not good, right? Is that making sense? Now, everybody had different rates. Right, so you would hire, let's say I'm down to 4 guys, okay, that are really awesome. Okay, they were able to, they created stuff exactly like I want. But one of them could be $4 an hour, and another one is $15 an hour, as an example. Or let's say $5 an hour and $15 an hour. So one is 3 times the cost. So immediately, right, at first glance, you'd be like, well, if the quality of the product is very similar, you know, then the $5 an hour guy is going to be a better value. But what we started finding out when we were tracking the time is we'd find that this didn't happen every time, but it did happen a number of times. The guy that would be at $15 an hour would be able to finish a project in 1 hour, right? That would be it. The other guy would take all 8 hours of the day or 7 hours or something like that to finish it, okay? So let's just say it takes him 8 hours. He's at $5 an hour. So, right, it was a $40 job to create that element for the game, where the $15 an hour guy, who was 3 times the hourly rate, finished it in an hour because he had better skills. He just knew how to use the tools better, whatever the case was. So that asset was only $15, okay? 15 versus 40. So the guy that was 3 times more expensive hourly ended up being way, way, way cheaper in the long run, okay? So that's how we were doing it with our artists, and I was able to nail it down to just a handful of guys that were just phenomenal. I went through so many artists. I mean, tons. I mean, if you go through my odesk, I must have, I don't even want to know, over 100 people that I've hired over the years that are artists, probably more than that we've cut or we've used or whatever the case might be. But the best guys and the guys that have been loyal and have remained with me for many, many years are a great team. And those are the guys that were at merchartists.com, which I mentioned in the podcast episode and also on the Facebook group. And by the way, guys, if you need artists for whatever reason, whether it's to make video games or do t-shirts or packaging designs, go for it. They do all my packaging designs as well, my brands and logos and everything. So are they the cheapest? No. But are they good? Yes, they're super efficient, super fast, and they will probably save you money in the long term. Now, I'm bringing this up because in the Facebook group, in Merch Elite, you can find that if you go and type Merch Elite on Facebook and join, people are posting, well, how do you find people that are cheap? How do you get shirts done for $5 per hour? If you're hiring somebody from Merch Artists, and let's just say that it works out to around $15 per hour, they would have to create 3 shirts in an hour. It's unlikely that they can create 3 shirts of quality in an hour. So what do? Well, what I do is that I have them work on one particular shirt that looks really cool, and let's just say it takes them a full hour to create it, okay? What I then do is I do variations. So I'll create, let's say, another 4 variations of that shirt. And this is where maybe the slogan changes. And I use an example where, let's say, you create some really cool custom lips, huge lips on a shirt. Well, think about the slogans that you can use for that, right? You can have something above it that says, I love you, or kiss me, or whatever it is. You can come up with a million things. And each time you put a new slogan on there, it becomes a new variation, a new shirt. So by creating that initial design, that takes the most time, but then creating the variations takes mere minutes, right? You can do these very, very quickly. So if you can do 5 shirts now in just over an hour, because 4 of them are variations, now that $15 has dropped down to $3 per shirt, right? $15 for an hour, and you've got 5 shirts. So that's one way that you can actually bring the price points down when you're doing that kind of stuff. It doesn't work, obviously, for packaging, product packaging, unless you've got a lot of similar products. If you've got a lot of variations, child variations, then you can obviously reuse some of the main stuff to speed things up. But if you're going to go out there and you're going to hire people, just realize you're going to go through bumps, right? You're gonna have to sift through the garbage that's out there to find those gems, okay? And when you do, you'll be set. But prepare to go through some headaches. I mean, I did. It took me months and months and months to finally nail down the right guys. And if you're willing to do that, if you got the time, just realize you're probably going to spend a lot of money getting to that point. If you're lucky, you might find the right guy right off the bat, but I would still try to compare that person against somebody else just so that you feel good about it and so that you chose the right person. I do this with VAs. I do this with essentially everybody. One final thought is you might be thinking, well, what if I just hire people on a per project basis? That is, instead of paying hourly, I pay them on each shirt. Okay, so I pay them, $5 per shirt, or I pay them $20 to create a package design, or whatever the case might be. You can do that. I have done that. I still do that to some extent, but it typically works when, or at least for me, it works when I've been doing this with somebody for a while and the requirements are typically the same. For example, if I'm doing a podcast and I need somebody to edit the podcast, and the podcasts are typically of the same length of time and there's not that much deviation, then we can work out a flat rate per episode, right? So that's it, guys. Definitely check out episode number 80 if you thought this content was interesting. 80 goes into the merch program. It's something that pays me out about somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500 per week is what gets deposited into my account. They do it monthly, right? So it'll be somewhere between $4,000 and $6,000 that gets deposited. And it's pretty cool. So if you aren't a member yet of Merch Elite, check that out. That's the new Facebook group. Hopefully you are already in our main Facebook group, right? That's called the FBA High Rollers. Well over 12,000 active members in there. Check that out, FBA High Rollers. If you type that into Facebook, you should see us, or you can go to the ampmpodcast.com website, and over on the right hand, the top of the right hand page, you'll see a link for our Facebook group. And finally, if you can leave me a review on iTunes, that would be fantastic. And if you're not subscribed to the podcast yet on iTunes, definitely do that so you don't miss anything, okay? Keep crushing it, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Hey guys, Manny Coats here. If you've been following my podcast, you know I'm a huge fan of the Helium 10 tools for Amazon sellers. I only use the best tools out there, and the Helium 10 suite of tools are, in my opinion, best in class. Now, just because I'm the founder of Helium 10 doesn't mean that's all I use, right? I go where the money's at, and if there's a tool on the market that I haven't made and that tool helps me make money, I'll use it, and I'll talk about it here on the podcast, and I'll even link to it in our tools section at the ampmpodcast.com website. But I can honestly say that there's no place that I know of where you can get all the important tools that an FBA seller would need in one place, where the tools work with one another to help you save time and make you a lot of money. Now, the Helium 10 tools have had a huge hand in helping me go from zero to over $1 million in Amazon sales in just 10 months. Okay, keyword research, listing optimization, and a super tool called 5K Checker that makes sure that the words in my listings, okay, the front end and the back end, are actually indexed by Amazon. And guys, if you're not checking this, you're leaving money on the table for sure, because Amazon is always tweaking their search engine. Okay, so I always use 5K Checker every single month on every single one of my listings to ensure that my listings are still indexed for my keywords and that I'm still pulling in customers like crazy. If you're a longtime listener, you know I'll never use a tool unless it can save me a lot of time or it's going to make me a lot of money. So I'm confident Helium 10 will do this for you guys, all right? There's a money-back guarantee, so there's no risk. Check it out. Head over to helium10.com. Helium10.com. That's helium10.com.
You've been listening to the AM/PM podcast hosted by Manny Coats. For more information, insider tools, and to get the resources mentioned in this episode, visit ampmpodcast.com.